Alfred Hitchcock once said that the difference between mystery and suspense is ultimately an intellectual versus emotional process. Whereas mysteries are fueled by setting up and slowly revealing a complex entanglement of who, why, and how, suspense is maintained through mounting tension and manipulating expectations. The audience knows, but will the characters find out in time? This core fundamental difference is what gives a series like Case Closed and a series like Death Note their distinct existence from one another. However, where the master filmmaker and I disagree is that the two genres are, quote,
absolutely miles apart.
Though most stories borrowing from the two genres tend to lean on one over the other, these blends of story elements are something you've all heard before, a thriller. And though there are plenty of voices out there that'll define what this is, some combining this term with suspense. Looking at you, Watch Mojo, you'll be hard-pressed to find much consensus. Even if we turn to the contemporary dictionary definition, it's more than a little broad. So, what exactly is a thriller to me, and why does it matter? Well, it doesn't necessarily, but if you're familiar with my column Anarchic Cinema over on Film Inquiry, you know that I find great joy in trying to surmise the artistically unexplainable, and that's where Monster comes in. Lightning does have the potential to strike the same place twice, but a series like Monster most likely won't. If we utilize the dictionary definition as the foundational understanding of the contemporary consensus on the thriller, Monster does meet the criteria. It's rife with crime, murder, conspiracy, and espionage. However, it's far more characterized by a subversion of these traditional elements into a slow burn head trip than it is a clear-cut genre staple. But to understand how this series is the poster child for what I consider to be the definitive thriller, the amount of info I need to parse before we cover my raw feelings is rather extensive, so this will feel far more like a video dissertation than simply a review. But in-depth discourse is sorely needed in the anime community as of late, and this is a perfect opportunity. You see how I like to complicate things? This is my justification on the unreasonably long wait time you guys have had to endure for me to get this video out. So, the minds behind this series have, for the most part, all gone on to play major roles in shaping modern anime as we know it, or was already in the process of doing so. Though I can obviously not name drop everyone whose significance played a decisive part in crafting Monster, and still maintain a modicum of attention from y'all, there are a select handful I feel I should bring up before we really get into this. I'm not going into their styles in particular detail, as some others have already done so, but if you're familiar with them, you'll understand why I'm bringing them up. First and foremost is Naoki Urasawa, creator of the original Seinen manga. Though graduating school with a degree in economics, Urasawa began his mangaka career at 21, and soon his still unbroken working relationship with Big Comic Originals set him up illustrating for Kazuya Kudo and Hotsaki Katsushika. After attracting early praise and success with his 1986 serial Yaruwa, Urasawa would gain international recognition upon releasing Monster in December of 1994, which would conclude in 2001 with 18 volumes. He is now considered one of the most influential artists in Japan, especially due to his series 20th Century Boys, whose production from 99 to 06 eclipsed the final volumes of Monster with a meteoric rise in popularity. He would follow up his series with a sizable novel in 2002 titled Another Monster, which was from the point of view of a reporter covering the events in the original manga. Now, I can't say much else because at the time of this video, I have woefully never read the manga nor the book. So if anyone's out there who'd like to see me more cultured, please send some volumes my way. The Monster anime would come about in 2004 by way of Studio Madhouse and was produced after the original manga run and companion novel had been finished. Genius! Now, why do I love these details? Well, firstly, Madhouse. That actually is all honestly that you need. For the other, I have one major gripe with film and television adaptations in general. Jumping into production to capitalize on a source's popularity before the story is properly finished, or at least given a sizable lead to avoid adaptations being overflowing with filler arcs, falling flat right out the gate, or drastically altering or dropping crucial details. Are you listening, Warner Brothers?
So good to see you again.
We can try this.
I believe this aspect is generally overlooked in anime by many people because anime, like all movies and series, stand on its own as individual works of art, and that's absolutely true. But how can you properly adapt a story so dense that seemingly every part is essential to the overall arc if you don't have all of the pieces? I'm all for creative reinterpretations of published works. Hell, I've done it myself. And this isn't an issue for every adaptation. However, I feel it greatly contributes to neutering an adaptation's potential if it's hastily chopped together, like what happened to Elfenlied in than the original Hellsing. Monster is a beast of a production to undertake, and to accomplish this arduous task, Masayuki Kojima was crowned series director. His career with Madhouse has bore critically successful fruit like the series adaptation for Master Keaton and the feature film Tibetan Dog, but I know most will recognize him for his now iconic work with Kinema Citrus as series director for Black Bullet and Made in Abyss. His eclectic episodial work ranges from storyboard art for Trinity Blood and Technolize to key animation for the likes of Black Lagoon and Gungrave. This guy's been around the block a couple of times, and the overall quality of Monster magnifies this fact. Now, while Kojima's grip over Monster maintains a vivid and consistent style and focus, there are 4 other episode directors who were noteworthy hands guiding the mammoth-sized production, and had already or would eventually break out with their own significant contributions to the medium. Ryosuke Nakamura had the most direct influence on Monster overall, apart from Kojima. In addition to writing and directing several episodes, he also was the series' primary storyboard artist. He would evolve his working relationship with Madhouse to great effect, storyboarding and directing episodes for Nana, Claymore, Death Note, and High School of the Dead. He probably is best known for the series Aiura, of which he served as the series director, writer, storyboard artist, OP unit director, even had his hands in some of the key animation. Kind of bewildering considering how goddamn boring the show was, even considering the fact that each episode's only a few minutes long. Next is Yukihiro Miyamoto, who, after Monster, would come to work closely with Akiyuki Shimbo at Shaft, and would eventually rank as a driving force behind the Madoka Magica movies. He would then be chosen to direct the third film, Rebellion, which boasts the highest critical and box office acclaim of the theatrical franchise to this date. Y'all remember how much Madoka changed the magical girl genre, right? And if you haven't seen it yet, I can't exactly say that you're in for a fun ride. And though I'm not certain which episodes, but Kenji Nagasaki, who was relatively the most low-key of the aforementioned directors at the time of Monster's production, would eventually rise to fame for helming Gundam Build Fighters in number 6, and I haven't seen either one. I bring him up because his most notable directorial achievement is redefining the shonen genre with My Hero Academia, and I love every frame of that show. I am the hype! Though there are many other episodic directors and other talented crew with 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon we could explore, there are only 3 other names I have to get to, then I'll actually talk about the series you came here to hear me dissect. Trust me, I hate listing 2 when it's not part of an official countdown. Character designs were handled by the legendary Kitaro Kosaka, a key animator and animation director for both Miyazaki and Takahata. As of Monster's production, he had just previously directed Nasu, Summer, and Andalusia, which became the first anime film to ever screen at the Cannes Film Festival. And to top all that off, he worked on all 3 of Ursawa's anime adaptations. Tetsuhiko Urahara was the head writer for the series. His career is flush with a weird myriad of OVA and episodial work, including Psycho Driver Soul Siren, Pet Shop of Horrors, Strike Witches, and Nana. However, whenever he's given charge of a series, the results lean toward the murkier side. Whether it's a mediocre series turned borderline propaganda like Gate, or a piss-poor ass backwards sequel like Gunslinger Girl Il Teatrino. And I've never had much of a desire to search out anything else he's done because Monster clearly is the pinnacle of Urahara's career without a whole lot of competition. And even then, there are some nagging issues with Monster's script that don't actually get addressed in the narrative, though I will address these in a moment. And finally, I need to spotlight the amazing opening by Morio Osaka from Cardcaptor Sakura, Chavitz, and Gunslinger Girl fame. A perfect mirror of the tone and pacing of the series, giving you the clues to the mystery with a welcome restraint, and all fantastically underscored by Konaki Hashima. This may be among my top 3 favorite anime openings of all time, and there isn't a bad thing that you could say about that without me jumping knuckles first down your throat. So why the flurry of names and titles? Well, as you can see from the pools of talent by which we would come to know these names, every drop of effort at work in this series screams out its influence on pretty much all the subsequent works mentioned. These individuals are some of the most distinctive minds working in the medium today, for better and for worse, and something changed significantly in the industry when this show came on the scene. No, that doesn't mean there's Sakuga jizzed everywhere. As a matter of fact, this isn't a series that is all hallmarked by utter smoothness of animation, though it's definitely got some amazing moments. And yet, of all the most popular anime at the time of its release, it has had among the most significant impact. That isn't to say this impact was necessarily felt in that instance, because that would be a gross lie. Remember, this was released in 2004. This was the year that some truly great anime came out, like Paranoia Agent and Samurai Champloo. But also remember, this was the year that Mobile Suit Gundam Z Destiny, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and Bleach were unleashed on the world. Naruto and One Piece were still riding very high, so people weren't looking to a massively long, slow-boiling thriller about serial murder in post-Soviet Germany as the series to carry the torch for all anime fans. And remember, for all you youngins out there, anime wasn't nearly as ubiquitous or socially acceptable in the United States as it is today.
Monster didn't even play on Adult Swim. It had a slot on the Sci-Fi Network of all places.
What all of this means is that Monster is not your average anime from the onset, if the massive 74-episode runtime and eventual star-studded team roster wasn't a dead giveaway. But there is one throbbing question you have, right? And by the end of the prologue arc, I was thinking this too. How the fuck can it last as long as it does without being riddled with filler?
Well, shall we?
Finally! Taking place in Germany throughout the late 80s and into the 90s, Monster's atmosphere relies almost exclusively on the actual historical context of Eastern Europe during that period. Though individuals, entities, organizations, and locations are obviously recrafted for dramatic effect, the chaos, rampant corruption, and constant threat of social upheaval after the fall of the Berlin Wall shrouds the series. As a result, the world of Monster is thoroughly alive and feels almost unnaturally grounded in reality, which says a lot considering some of the later arcs of the series. The minute details of post-Soviet politics, police integrity, journalistic responsibility, budding social sciences, and the resurgence of nationalism and nationalist bigotry all provide a blanketed historical context that effectively encapsulates the series' main thematic through line: the inner conflict of who we believe we are, who we try to be, and the monster we all foster deep inside us thrashing to get out.
What is it that you are the most afraid of?
The monster inside of me is getting bigger. Munch, munch, chomp, chomp, gobble, gobble, gulp.
It would be natural to presume this series is a heavy moral crusade, taking the corner of one particular ideal and riding it out to its bones or dust. And I did too when I first started it up. But that's where we're all wrong. Monster does indeed present many strange yet poignant moral arguments, but it doesn't champion one in particular as the correct path, as all of the characters, even the most seemingly innocent ones, are contradictory rats' nests of fear, greed, lust, and envy. Not all are nefarious in their intent, but selflessness and egotism are in constant flux, and throughout the overall arc it seems that neither are mutually exclusive from one another. We primarily follow the trials and tribulations of Dr. Kenzo Tenma, a Japanese brain surgeon in Dusseldorf. A surgical savant engaged to the daughter of the hospital director and a promising future of medical research ahead, his life is just about set. However, while disgusted with the bias of the hospital's preferential treatment, he refuses a direct order to save the city's mayor in favor of operating on a young boy that arrived moments before with a gunshot wound to his head. Though he would save the boy Johann, Tenma loses his credibility, social standing, and fiancée Nina. While dejected and abused by those who once praised him, things change suddenly when several obstructive and manipulative doctors are mysteriously murdered, and Johann and his catatonic twin sister Anna disappear from the hospital.
And by process of elimination,
Tenma becomes chief of surgery at the hospital and remains at that post for 9 years until a criminal named Adolf Junkers leads him to a confrontation with an adult Johann, with Johann killing Junkers in Tenma's presence. Heinrich Lunge, inspector for the German Federal Criminal Police Office, or BKA, initiates a manhunt for Tenma, believing him to be also responsible for the near-decade-old doctor murders that allowed his promotion to chief of surgery. Tenma is now a fugitive on the road to hell, digging up information about Johann and his motives in order to prove his innocence and to stop the carnage and destruction left in Johann's wake once and for all.
This is a gross oversimplification of this story because, oh my fucking god, is there a lot here.
Some characters and settings are returned to periodically throughout the series, some are one-shots that serve to define the social framework of the characters, and there are others to expose the dark, repressed memories of a few key players, and how addressing these memories can either be beneficial or utterly destructive. Though you may debate the efficacy of each character's journey, the twisting mysteries and exhaustive ebb and flow of tension and anxiety make each chapter impactful to the overall story. The value of life means something different to each person we meet. Redemption and corruption often walk hand in hand with people struggling to toe the line. Daily routines and communities are flush with multitudes of different personalities and interactions, but before you think that I've described the most vivid world building in a series ever, the series isn't omnipresent with its coverage either. It's vastly scatterbrained over moments that slowly build on extended silences and subtle details.
But before I get ahead of myself, you might be asking, looking at the bones of its story structure, Monster doesn't feel all that original. It's a revenge-fueled whodunit, kind of like Gosford Park meeting Oldboy.
Firstly, it is true that the overall plot is quite straightforward. Stop Johann. And that simplicity is an absolute necessity. And why is because I feel the story takes more notes out of 1970s Italian giallo than standard Japanese fare, possessing many of the same symptoms. Down and out protagonists thrown into impossible situations, often involving death, where each character encountered, from maids to cops to kids, or some shade of corrupt impossible suspects, snaking through a convoluted labyrinth of clues and chase scenes where a cathartic confrontation is the goal, though it may not exactly pan out that way. These stories nihilistically say there are no happy endings in real life, and quite possibly no justice either. And a straightforward plot is absolutely required. Giallo is much more about getting sucked into the intensity of the moment than working with the protagonist to solve the crime. You've already met the killer, now it's a matter of when and how that killer is confronted.
And when it does happen, all bets are off.
Now, 50 years ago when this video started, this sounds a lot like what Hitch had to say about what constitutes suspense. And congrats for paying attention, that's true.
But to discuss this further, prepare for some bigger spoilers.
Let's take for instance the early subplot that introduces the baby. Tenma, just recently on the prowl for Johann, runs into a bizarre, eccentric man heading a neo-Nazi cult attempting to resurrect the glory of the Third Reich. Tenma works not only to undo the baby's plans, but also to save as many lives as he can. Just by this definition, this could be the breakdown of an entire movie.
This is quite possibly one of my favorite parts of the series, for a handful of reasons.
1. This character and how he's introduced is a crystal clear reference to the man from another place. This character was played by Michael J. Anderson through the first 2 seasons of David Lynch and Mark Frost's television series Twin Peaks. He is a mysterious character with playfully dark motives, working and scheming as the arm for an otherworldly plane called the Black Lodge. Though Monster isn't a supernatural series, the baby exudes a similar mercurial nature, and honestly, though there isn't anything I'm aware of to support this, based on the baby's fascist roots, toxic xenophobia, and a penchant to be unnervingly cheerful while being mercilessly violent, he could have been a strong inspiration for the Major in Hellsing.
The other reason why I chose this vignette is how it plays with both suspense and mystery elements in order to subvert our expectations and then raise the scene stakes.
While Tenma is searching for Johann, intent on stopping him at all costs, he discovers that Johann's twin sister Nina, whom he had saved in a prior arc, was also searching for her brother with the aim to kill him. This automatically shifts his priorities from killing Johann to stopping Nina, more determined to preserve her life and way of life than his ultimate end goal. This is dramatically different than Giallo, where very rarely is there any selfless acts because humans are intrinsically selfish. Now, these 2 plot threads work separately to perpetuate Monster's overall suspense, but there's no mystery. They have very specific goals known to the audience and they are carrying them out. The only distinction is a variant ticking clock. Are they going to succeed, or will they be too late? That's where the baby comes into play. Though the pair of them believed to be operating incognito, it is soon revealed that the baby was one step ahead the whole time. Both Tenma and Nina independently discover that the baby is setting fire to the city's Turkish quarter, and the act is directly connected to Johann. Now the stakes are even larger. A different kind of clock begins to tick, and scores of people are counting on these characters to stop the plan.
It's the bomb under the table. The Turkish quarter don't know it, but you and I do.
Through this, it is revealed that there are machinations at work here that are far beyond the scope of a little ultra-conservative blockfire. This is something building to a national conspiracy level. Yet, quite possibly it's motiveless at its core, as Johann stalks each arc like a shadow, playing with other characters to his own delight. Though everyone else is scurrying about, embraced by adrenaline and fear, he's calm, collected, and methodical. Though some details of the twins' troubled past are already known, at this early point in the series, not many of these details are given proper context from the necessary people. These characters need more answers to understand the present and to curtail future devastation, so we are resultantly invested in these answers. Thusly, the building of suspense, the mounting of gargantuan stakes, a brewing mystery, and a constant theme of mass hysteria and indoctrination all blanket each other and give us the thriller.
Now, I have burdened the fuck out of you with my dense droning, so I apologize for that, and I will be a bit more brisk in wrapping this up.
As you can see, my favorite part of the series is the story itself. It's rich with everything a good story should have. The emotion is raw and ugly. The politics are shrewd and cold. The comedy is sparse, dark, and witty. Though, there are moments of such blunt introspection that I can't help at least one eye roll, and sometimes the plot evolves in a way that's way too fucking convenient.
I think he's a good person. I couldn't tell you why.
I'm Wilfred Brimley, and I'd like to talk to you.
Some moments are so serendipitous that it really tests the overall suspension of disbelief the series relies on.
He got away! All 5 buses left at the same time?
It's also got those old anime pitfalls, like people constantly repeating what the other person has just said.
It was in East Berlin over 10 years ago.
You two met 10 years ago. Over in East Berlin?
And sometimes, we're just given some pretty damn awkward line reads.
My, you really shouldn't have. Oh, thank you.
And there may be moments through some later arcs that you're going to see a pattern emerge.
I gotta do this on my own. You can't come. You can't do this on your own. I'ma come with you. Don't follow me. I'ma follow you. But throughout the story, the main characters encounter people from all walks of life, from country doctors to serial killers, from business tycoons to prostitutes, and explore the disturbing repercussions of eugenics, social programming, behavior modification, and simply life in a modern tumultuous society. Think Lord of the Flies meets A Clockwork Orange meets Battle Royale, and that'll just about scratch the surface. It's a smorgasbord of themes and tropes, and it's kind of amazing. Each chapter borrows tastes from various hard-boiled detective stories and mysteries, and while some arcs only last an episode or two, each story builds back into the whole, always strengthening the vitality of the characters, their interactions, and their moral conundrums.
I have honestly never seen a story like this in anime before, and that's fucking saying something.
And like all good thrillers, we discover new pieces to the puzzle as the characters do, but because of pieces coming to Tenma, Nina, and others are in fragments, the only person who knows as close to the whole picture at that point in time is you, the audience. And new evidence and clues arrive in mostly believable ways, with many times including repressed memories relived, spurred on by external triggers. I could go on and on about the uniqueness of the character designs and the richness of some of the background and concept art, but I went through the people responsible, so you already have an idea of the quality here.
However, after all the thousands of words I've written on Monster, some of you probably would still see my examination as a sort of shallow and a little tepid. And I honestly probably would agree with that.
Regardless on how deeply I could dive into the dramatic morality play of each character, or how each layer of characterization we experience builds more on a complex and ethically gray world, where we have no inclination on what could be the right choice or the right lifestyle, just like real life, and it still wouldn't be enough. I honestly could write an entire book on Monster and its exemplification of the thriller genre and still be selling it short. While this series is clearly not for everyone, and the ending may actually cause a few people to rage at the screen,
it might come across as a little lackluster, to put it mildly.
Disappointed!
it still stands as a monumental achievement in anime and in visual storytelling. We scrutinize every breath taken, every itch scratched, every second ticking by, and it is damn downright glorious. Oh, and by the way, I came to find out as I was doing my exhaustive research and study while writing this, that Guillermo del Toro has been trying to develop a live-action adaptation of Monster, which was originally being produced by HBO. Though they passed on the series, Del Toro is still pitching it to other studios, and this is the kind of story that truly deserves a full-fledged live-action adaptation built by an international cast and crew. There are so many possibilities for it to be the next Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy meeting Hannibal.
What is not to fucking love about that?
But, to make a personal point, this needs to be a series and not a film. There is so damn much here that any feature adaptation will sell all aspects of the story short, so don't fuck this one up, people.
But as we come to a close here, it's time for me to pick the next Anime Academia spotlight. And so you guys don't roast me alive for waiting another
entire year
to put another episode out. I'm going to stick to some shorter, lighter fare. So next episode is going to be the 1985 fantasy feature, Angel's Egg. Get ready for some art house, y'all. Twitter and shit in the description. Peace.
contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.